I just read a great article about using cover as a D&D combat tactic.
Sweet, let's get back to D&D basics with the ultimate armor class booster.
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds.
Well, let's see how well we can cover. Well, cover.
So today we're going to talk about using cover in combat to make it more tactical and more interesting.
By using this element of the game, you can make your combats that much more dynamic.
And we're going to address it from both the GM as well as the player standpoint. So how to use it, how to counter it. Now, as we mentioned earlier, like there was this great article that we read, definitely self-plug here, over on nerdarchy.com, and it was all about cover. Nerder Doug did a great job writing this article, and I thought it'd be a great topic for a video.
So the article's called Take Cover, taking a closer look at defensive obstacles in 5e D&D.
Yeah, there will be a link down in the description, so if you want even more information on using cover in your game and some of Nerder Doug's thoughts on it, you can go down there, click, and check that out.
All right, so why don't we actually take a look at the rules for cover and, go into it.
All right, I'm going to grab my handy-dandy device and pull up the rules for cover over on D&D Beyond. It's just so easy and convenient to do so. All right, so over in Chapter 9, we have cover. Walls, trees, creatures, and other obstacles can provide cover during combat, making a target more difficult to harm. Target can benefit from cover only when an attack or other effect originates on the opposite side of the cover. There are 3 degrees of cover. If a target is behind multiple sources of cover, only the most protected degree of cover applies. The degrees aren't added together. For example, if a target is behind a creature that gives half cover, a tree trunk that gives 3/4 cover, the target has 3/4 cover. So here are the rules for half cover. A target with half cover has a +2 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws. A target has half cover if an obstacle blocks at least half of its body. The obstacle might be a low wall, a large piece of furniture, a narrow tree trunk, or a creature, whether the creature is an enemy or a friend. Then we have 3/4 cover. A target with 3/4 cover has a +5 bonus to AC and dexterity saving throws. A target has 3/4 cover if about 3/4 of it is covered by an obstacle. The obstacle might be a portcullis, an arrow slit, or a thick tree trunk. Now, total cover. A target with total cover can't be targeted directly by an attack or a spell, although some spells can reach such a target by including it in the area of effect. A target has total cover if it is completely concealed by an obstacle. So, we have 3 different versions to use. 2 of them are really kind of easy to use for you to fight around. And the third one is just the complete obstacle and is going to keep the enemies away from you, but also you away from the enemies. So the question I have for you, the Nerdarchy audience and community, is how often does it come up in your games? Are you using it? Do you have some fun creative stories how you've used cover in your games? Why don't you do me a favor and share it down below in the comments with the Nerdarchy community?
While you're down there, don't forget to do all those fun things that, make YouTube and Nerdarchy happy. Like, share, subscribe, even, clicking that little notification bell so you don't miss a single video.
And as a quick reminder, we drop new Nerdarchy videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so come on back and see what's new.
So when you look at having the options of cover in your game, it's going to do a lot of things. As we pointed out, it's going to make it a little bit more dynamic. It's going to have more fun, with both sides having issues hitting, and it's going to give you things to kind of play off of and play around. I know myself, I am much more into crafting a tabletop scene when it comes to, putting out a battlefield. I enjoy making the terrain. It's fun. I know Dave enjoys, doing the maps, because we've been playing remotely for a long time now. But it's a scenario where if you put things on the battlefield, this gives, I'm going to jump behind the barrel. I'm going to, catapult off the couch. Just having things there makes the combat more fun because it's more things that you can do. On the other side, if you're playing just theater of the mind, as a player, you should ask, and if a player asks and you're the GM, you should allow, is there a chair? Is there a barrel? Is there something that I can hide behind? You want to say yes. You want to have these things because the players are actively engaging with your map, with your terrain. So yeah, totally allow it. And that'll allow for these kinds of things outside of the regular mechanics and things that we're going to go over, that much more fun.
Also do like quick couple mechanical things. One, half cover, +2 to your armor class +2 to your saving throw. There's very few things in the game that are going to give you that high of plus, especially to those two areas at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
3/4 cover +5, right? Like, there's nothing that's giving you anything close to that in the game. Like, you can do the shield spell for a +5 to your armor class, but there's nothing for your dex save.
Right.
So that's really strong. And as a GM, you can use these things really thematic. You want to do a hostage scene, the bad guy grabs a nearby civilian, uses them for a body shield, holds the knife to their throat. The knife to the throat in D&D doesn't mean so much because it's like, well, can they do enough damage to kill them in one shot? But here's the thing. If they're roughly the same size as the target they grab, I'm going to say that's 3/4 cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, not only are they harder to hit, there's also like the chance that if you miss by 5 or miss by 2, depending on what you do, as the GM, I'd be like, you've just targeted the captive instead. So, that might give them pause, something to think about, and also just make them harder to hit. But we're going to also go over some things that can make you cooler as a player when things like that happen as well.
So we're not going to go into a huge amount of depth as to what all of these are, but there are 4 subclasses that their mechanics are going to offer rules or additional ways of getting cover. If you go into Artificer and you go to the Artillerist, 15th level, you're going to get Fortified Position. This is going to help you out.
Yeah, basically it creates a 10-foot area where you can get covers. So can your allies. Super cool. Now, most of the subclass abilities that you can get are high level when it comes to getting cover, except for Bard of Creation, right? As an action, you can create physical things. Well, why couldn't you create cover? Why, eventually you can get large and huge, right? It's starting at 3rd level, and then at 6th level, you get even better, and it just goes up from there. But, why couldn't you just create a wall with arrow slits in it, right? As the bard, and be like, okay, I'm just going to make this thing. It might be a little annoying to figure out how much, because there's a GP cost of what you can create. So you're like, how much does it cost to make a stone wall with an arrow slit?
Or maybe you're just the bard who's known for conjuring couches. And I hide behind the couch,
Or tables in front of you, something, yeah.
No, there's definitely a lot of ways that you can, play up these kind of angles. But what else do we have? So if we go into Fighter, specifically Psy Warrior at 15th level, they're going to get Bulwark of Force.
This is basically just like you create an area around you and your allies that just deflects things away, essentially giving you half cover. Super cool, super useful.
And our last one, we're looking at Ranger. We're specifically looking at the Swarm Keeper, and that's Mighty Swarm at 11th level.
That one actually allows your swarm to grab you and move you around. And what happens when it does this, it gives you half cover because you're covered with bugs and they take the brunt of the assault instead of you. But as you can see, cover is such a potent ability and mechanic in the game that most subclasses that do get it aren't getting it until 11th level above. The one that gets it at low level is probably an unintended consequence because, you get to create stuff and depending on how creative your players are, they might be like, oh, wait a minute, can I make a 10-foot wall so me and my party can hide behind and put some arrow slits in it? Because there's no complexity limit to what you can make. It's all just about how much does it cost.
Right. So that is going to require, some conversation with your GM, since there is not a listed gold cost on a 10-foot wall.
Before your adventures, you're going to have to hire an engineer, get an estimate in writing, get it notarized, all that good, so you can bring it to your GM and be like, this is how much a wall costs per foot. So clearly I can make X amount of wall. Now we're going to jump over to the player side of things, and, there are 2 feats in particular that allow you to counter cover.
So we're looking at Spell Sniper and Sharpshooter. These things, when you take them, you wind up ignoring cover when you're doing those particular things, whether you're casting a spell or you're, firing a ranged weapon.
And when we talk about ignoring cover, we mean half and 3/4. Full cover is full cover. There's no ignoring that. Even with X-ray vision, the wall would still be there.
Yeah, these abilities do not allow you to fire your ranged weapon or spell through material.
Yeah, although there might be like an arcane archer's arrow that allows you to do something weird like that.
So next we're going to look at spells, and there's, quite a variety. Again, we're not going to go into, heavy depth on all of these things, but we've got 8 spells.
Yeah, so Blade Barrier is 3/4 cover for anything that is inside the barrier. I know that's a favorite spell of yours.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be a favorite spell of another friend of ours until Ted, as the dungeon master, kept throwing them into their own Blade Barrier. But again, also you could put that around the archer, and that gives them 3/4 cover, or a spellcaster with either one of those feats that we mentioned earlier, and they can fire away with impunity at everyone, and they still get the protection. And imagine being the spellcaster with 3/4 cover +5 to your armor class, and having access to the shield spell as well.
Yeah, that's got to feel, little tanky. So Bigby's Hand, if you go with the interposing angle, this is a 5th level spell. It's going to give you half cover if you keep it, close.
Yeah, well, essentially the way that spell works is you put it on a person, and it just puts the hand in their face and blocks them, and they have to make a strength check in order to get through it. And I think they have to have a greater strength than the hand, and the hand has a 26 strength, so good luck with that. But it's the ultimate talk to the hand, which is going to then give everyone half cover against that particular target or enemy. So next up, we got some wall spells. We have ice, force, and stone. And they range from 5th to 6th level spells. Even Blade Barrier was a 6th level spell. So all of these things are much higher level spells. Again, you're creating something that can block enemies from you. You could basically go to the edges and peek around and make ranged attacks, and then duck behind the walls. So tactically, you're going to be able to use these to your advantage, especially if there's a distance between you and the enemies. So you can put it up right there, and they have to work their way up to the wall. But then I found there's another spell that might be really interesting to use in conjunction with Wall of Stone.
And what's that?
Stone Shape. If the wizard casts Wall of Stone and then the druid used Stone Shape, could then they make arrow slits in the Wall of Stone, so that your allies that are casting spells or archers could fire through?
I would say so. You could technically duck behind and have this little thing, and you're just shooting out. I mean, that I would say would change it from the half cover that the spell normally goes to 3/4 cover. But I think that's going to be another one of those GM needs to interpret, for that kind of thing.
There's also Meld into Stone, which basically just allows you to go into a wall or stone. You don't know what's going on, but you have full cover. They have to do a ton of damage in order to damage you or eject you from that particular area. They have no real way of detecting you unless they know you went there. And while you're in there, you can actually cast spells on yourself. So if you wanted to do a bunch of buffing on yourself, or you needed to heal or whatever, you could at least do that, and you're kind of out of harm's way.
And that's a 3rd level spell, so that's significantly lower than a lot of the other ones. So definitely useful to think about.
Now, I was thinking, this is not a great use for the spell, but you could technically do it. If you were to put your spellcaster or your archer in a force cage and use the cage version so that things can pass in and out of it, I would say that would probably be 3/4 cover, if a portcullis is considered 3/4 cover.
Right.
So they could be in there, especially if they have those feats we talked about. They're going to be pretty safe from all things. Nothing can get into it via teleporting or whatever. And they can just fire away with impunity, especially if you have, maybe 2 or 3 party members that have these capabilities. They'll be tucked away nice and safe. While the rest of your melee fighters are up there doing their thing, they can be picking away targets. Again, maybe not the best use of Force Cage, but maybe an interesting one.
I would say that, looking at interesting ways to use these spells. I mean, we're talking about, Force Cage is a high level spell. So you're talking about, that upper tier of gameplay. Is that necessarily going to be useful? I don't know. But Force Cage is definitely a fun spell. And to use it this way is going to be comical.
You're fighting a Tarrasque. You can't put it on the Tarrasque, but you have it on your list. What do I do with it? I know, I put it on us. It'll beat its head against the Force Cage all day long, getting nowheres.
That's true.
In the meanwhile, your party can attack it through the bars.
Very true. So next we're going to look up some magic items. And for this one, our first one, we're going to look at Flying Chariot. This is an item that's going to give you a +1 to your AC, as well as be able to provide half cover.
Yeah, so that's great. You know, the bonus to armor class, it's, you know, basically covers half your body. So and especially if you have flying mounts that you can attach to, you can fly around the battlefield, you know, shooting at your enemies, casting spells, it gives you some protection. You know, I didn't put it on our list, but Darian's Instant Fortress, I believe, has arrow slits in it as well. So like you'd be able to do the same thing and fight from there,
Indeed.
from relatively safety. And then there's one more, which is like the arcane mech kind of D&D that came out in Tasha's Cauldron and everything.
All right, so this thing is called the Mighty Servant of Luco, and we're horrible here. If we've mispronounced it, I'm certain that somebody's going to correct us.
We apologize to Luco.
But this is going to offer full cover because you're inside a giant mech.
Yeah, and I mean this thing is so overpowered anyway. Like at that point, the cover doesn't matter that much. It's insanely powerful, but it is just another way to incorporate cover into combat. So, really, it's just one of those things. It can be a little bit tougher, a little bit harder if you're playing theater of the mind and you can't actually visualize and see it. I always, as a GM, I try and come down on the side of the players when they want to try and do interesting things where it's not like, I just hit it with my sword, but as the GM as well, you can use cover. And I've done this oftentimes against my players to buff up my monsters and make them a little more challenging, make them harder to get to. The idea of using hostages is a great idea. Heck, what if, they're up on, the villains are up on a ridge with like 5 stakes that are, stuck in the ground. And by stakes, I mean like posts or poles.
Right.
And each one of them has a villager tied to it. And the archers are firing from behind the villagers. What do? Do they just like, all right, shoot the hostage, get rid of their cover, or
I said cast fireball,
clear it all out at once, or there's a challenge in this, so now they have to come up with a more creative way to do it, or maybe like they sneak up and they see the scene and like, oh, we don't want to do a head-to-head combat now. We have to figure out how to like sneak up the other side of the ridge and infiltrate the bandit camp or whatever, so that we can get at them and save the hostages.
That's always, as we always talk about here on the channel, the heroic thing to do, and to be able to see, that particular example and have the option of, retreat and regroup and go in another direction. It's certainly going to incorporate a new aspect, a new challenge to the game that, some players might not really be thinking, or some DMs might not really be thinking about. So we just wanted to bring this kind of, D&D basics, and talk about, because, we don't see it, cover's not being affected or used in most of the games that we're playing. So I was like, you know what? Doug wrote a really great article. As we said before, you can check it out down in the description and see how you want to add cover properly to your game.
Yeah, well, I know my one character, Bolt, uses cover as often as possible. He's always jumping back and forth between things. He's a crossbowman. He's mostly a rogue, so the last thing he wants to do is be near anything and have anything attacking him. We have fighters for that.
That's true.
If you want another video where we cover some basics, we have D&D character creation basics. Where do you start?
If you'd like to help Nerdarchy keep making videos like this one and all the others that we do, why not head over to Patreon and support us there?
As a thank you, you'll receive 5e content for both players and DMs alike every month, a chance to game with us, and more.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.